Hi everyone,
G'day.
welcome to Parkside Live. I don't know where you are, but it's very chilly where we are at the moment. So if you want to grab a cuppa, we've got a cuppa, something to keep yourself warm. Yeah, that'd be great. And we are so thankful that you're joining us, and we hope that tonight or today, whenever you're watching, that you find our conversation on the way we work interesting and may change the way that you work.
Well,
Yeah.
hopefully. Now, when we talk about work, often we associate with jobs.
Yep.
I've had a lot of different jobs in my life. I think the first job that I picked up when I was about 16 was being a builder's labourer on a demolition for a guy. And I wonder, as you're watching this, perhaps you may be able to recall your first job. Do you know your first job?
Yeah, my first job, I was 16, I think, and working in an accounts department for a German company that my dad and my aunt both worked at.
There you go.
Yeah.
The old accountancy, yep. And I think we can also see, though, that work is bigger than just a job. For some of us, you may be watching this running your own business or company. For others, you may be doing a different kind of work.
Yep.
In Australia, we have volunteer work programs where people, for example, volunteer their time to go and regenerate bushland. They plant trees, they pick up rubbish. In Australia, we too have housework, work around the home, the work of looking after kids, and increasingly, for some people, that's work that they pay other people to do, childcare centres. Some people choose to do it, look after themselves. Lots of different kinds of work, and if we take work at the most basic, it's simply expending effort or energy. Yeah, that's right. And so we can expend effort or energy in lots of different ways. But tonight, primarily, we want to talk about completing a particular job. Sometimes for money, sometimes not. We do it for different reasons. But we want to explore that. And we want to just start by saying, well, when we talk about that idea of work, I wonder how it makes you feel. Some of us get up to an alarm in the morning and shuffle out the door to a job. Some of us have the privilege of working in a way that we just feel energized by doing it. How do you feel when you think of the idea of work?
If I think about the idea of work as in when I used to have to go to an office or, you know, some of the jobs that I've had, I don't look back fondly on some of those because I didn't enjoy having to be at a certain place at a certain time. But I think of the work that I do now, it is still work, but I feel like I was made for it. And there is, while it can still be very hard and there are some parts that I don't jump around with joy about, there is still a joy and a satisfaction, and I would rather be nowhere else kind of feeling about it.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
One of my early jobs, I worked in a steel construction place, and they just produced a whole range of products made out of steel. And the way that most of those products were produced, there was these rolls of steel, and the rolls were about this wide and quite thin, you know, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters thin. And the steel was just in this big spiral, like about 2 meters tall. They'd put it on a roller so that it could just sit there and spin. And then one end of the steel was fed into the machine, and it was through some rollers. And those rollers would gradually change the shape of this thin ribbon of steel into a brace, into shelving, into pallets, like lots of different things. And I remember I had my job, and we would work 10 hours a day, and my job was literally to stand there, watch. The steel would roll out. There would be a guillotine drop, chikunk. It would cut the bracket. I would then pick up the bracket and stack it.
Wow.
Pick up the bracket and stack it. Hopefully at this point there's a machine doing the job that I did. And the frustrating thing was that when you stacked them, the brackets could twist. And so if you didn't place the bracket right, your pile of 20 brackets would fall on the floor, and then you didn't want to hit the stop button because you needed production to keep going. And so you're trying to make a new pile and fix up the old. Oh, it was a nightmare. And I think we started, 6:30 in the morning, and lunch was probably about 1 o'clock. And I think every minute from 1, I just, stack. Look at the clock. Stack. Look at I felt like literally time stood still. It was rough. And as we're talking about work here, you may be able to reflect on a job that you loved. You may be able to reflect on a job that you survived. But I think how we see work has a huge effect.
Yeah.
And I think there are some pretty courageous people who turn up to a job that they don't enjoy for the benefit of other people in their lives. Yeah. But we want to draw some inspiration here from the scriptures to maybe challenge the way that we see work. Yeah. We're going to read from the book of Genesis here, and it says here, on the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation. As he rested from all his work, and God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because that was the day that he rested from all his work of creation. Now,
there's lots of work.
There's lots of work there. Lots of work popping up. And work is viewed in very different ways across many different cultures. Yeah. Some cultures, it's when you're working, you do the bare minimum. I was working on a major construction project with a guy, and we were trying to dig a hole. We had a machine in, and we had to make some adjustments, and the machine had moved on, so we had to hand dig it. And I was trying to encourage this guy. I said, mate, we've got to get this done. Let's get through. And he goes, no, don't rush. We'll just do what we've got to do. And I said, yeah, but mate, we want to get it done. And he goes, it'll still be here tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And I could see where he was coming from, but from my point, I wanted to get the job done and move on to the next thing. That was just how he saw it. Sometimes we can view work as a chore, something that we have to do. Particularly if you've been around church circles, you probably know the story that seems to say that we work as part of a curse.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, you heard the story? Yep. Maybe you've heard the story. And yet, I think there's a different way to see work. And what we see right here is that in this story of how life begins, that actually life emerges, existence begins because someone chooses to expend energy.
Yep.
Life begins because someone works. And so it says not only is work here the divine design, it is the very character of the Creator that we work. Now, obviously, there's no money changing hands here, but this is an expending of energy in order to create something.
Yeah.
And perhaps if you are someone who designs, who creates, who crafts, that you can relate to the notion of creating, of expending energy simply because you want to see something created. And that tells us something. That tells us something that as people, work serves as an expression of who we are. You know, I mean, do you feel like when you were an accountant, did that serve as an expression of who you were?
Not necessarily, but in that, I guess I was helping others, and I did have a bit of a maths brain. I didn't enjoy it, like doing the boring things that accountants have
to do. It's okay. You can say you enjoyed maths.
But I think maybe there was a tiny facet that expressed, because I found that stuff easy, and so I could help other people with it. Yeah. It wasn't how I wanted to live my life, so I no longer do those things in the capacity I did before. But saying that, there are other ways that I use those skills. Yeah.
And so as I reflect on my first job as a builder's labourer, part of it was knocking down walls. Now, that gave me the opportunity to express maybe some things within me. And yet what we see is that work is designed as an expression of who we are. And if you know the story here, that in the beginning, when life was created, that humanity was actually put to work to look after creation.
Yeah.
Like it was part of the plan that there is something about work that brings us joy. Matter of fact, if you know Martin Luther King, the civil rights activist from the United States, he said this, that all work has a degree of dignity when it is conducted with energy and excellence. And I think that is powerful, that if work is something that is part of what we were designed, then when we work, we're actually expressing something of ourselves, but we're expressing something beyond ourselves. It's part of this cosmic design of how we are meant to live our lives. As a contrast to that, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where maybe you've taken a day and maybe you're feeling a bit sick, or maybe and you've just gone, I'm just going to veg out, I'm going to relax on my couch, and you get up at the end of the day, and how do you feel?
I don't feel any more energized. I might have enjoyed it, but for some of it, but I don't feel more energized.
Yeah,
unless it's that I've taken some rest because I have just overextended myself. But if it's just for no real reason, then I just want to be a sloth for a while. I'm not feeling energized the next day or even after it, going, oh, now I can go run a marathon. Or now I'm feeling ready to hang out with 25 people. It's not usually the way that works.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when you give yourself to work, when you expend energy towards a particular goal, I've had days where it's physically tiring, and yet you come in and you feel invigorated and tired at the same time. When you devote your mental focus to resolving issues, you can come out of it maybe with your head spinning, and yet somehow that challenge, that expenditure of energy has brought life. And in that very act, you've expanded your capacity. You've actually shaped who you're becoming. Physically, you've increased your capacity for physical work so that the next day you will perform better. Mentally, you have developed a greater focus so that the next time you can solve a more complex problem. Work serves to develop us as human people. And that's something, the interesting thing for me here, and I'll get a bit wordy here, is that in this story where you see the creator crafting, where you see God working, and then you see humanity working, and then you see this corruption of that creation, it is actually the same word that's used. We worked here, something went wrong, we still work. It's not that we work because something went wrong. And I think that's a powerful thing. And when we look at it, we may accord work to finance, we may accord it to volunteer, but if we are wanting to see a new world take place, that actually takes the expenditure of energy. And so, for example, my friend sitting around this table this morning, there was a bill being voted on, and he wanted to see some civil rights protected. Now, we had talked about that, had a good laugh, but he then went away, wrote a letter and said to his local politician, I want to see this happen. He expended energy towards a goal because he wanted to see a different world. And a poet of yours, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, wrote these words, let today light tomorrow. When we give ourselves to work today, that can change who we are tomorrow. It can change our world tomorrow. One of the things that we are focused on at the moment is just the injustice that is occurring in Gaza. There is aid waiting to be delivered to starving women and children not being let through. We can talk about that, but unless we actually do the work, expend energy, we are not going to see justice come. We are not going to see a better tomorrow for those people, that we are invited to take up work. It is a reflection of the Creator, and it is something that you and I were designed to do.
Yeah, I think it's like in that, you were talking about before the corruption after creation. I think some of us might see work as a punishment, like still being in that mentality, even if you haven't been around church circles, if we haven't found the kind of work, whether it's for money or not, that, makes us come alive and fuels our creativity. And I think it's, as we change our thoughts about what work is and that it's not a punishment, we might see things in us change as well, and then the world around us.
Yeah, there's a scripture that reminds us, and it says, unless the Lord builds a house, the workers work in vain. And I think, particularly in our world, there is a culture of almost working from fear.
Yeah.
Some of you may know the famous industrialist Elon Musk, and he made this quote. He said, it doesn't matter how hard you work, someone is always working harder. Yeah. Now, if the stories are true, that individual works some incredibly insane hours, right? And yet, when I hear that quote, my response to that quote is that's actually a quote of fear.
Yeah.
That I have to work at this crazy level because I'm scared that someone else is going to beat me, that something is going to happen. When we balance those two ideas, someone else is always working harder, unless the Lord builds a house, people build it in vain. We see that actually work is designed as a reflection of who God is. Yeah. It's an expression of who we are. It is an opportunity to serve.
Yeah.
That when I go to work, I'm actually serving my family.
Yeah.
That's for those of you who work for a boss, when you go to work, you are choosing to serve your boss. Now that may be difficult.
Yeah.
I've actually worked for a boss and we had to go to mediation.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a very unsatisfactory process.
Yep.
I felt like we didn't get really to the heart of the conflict, and I felt like it didn't really bring any change in the organisation. I had to make a decision at the end of that.
Yeah.
I'm still here. I still think I can contribute here. I need to do whatever I can to serve. And maybe I did a good job. But I tried, made phone calls. Hey, what can I do? What do you want me to do? It was difficult.
Yeah.
But I chose to expend the energy because I wanted to see something different happen. Yeah. And so as we think on work, I wonder how you're viewing work right now. There may be issues with other people at work. There may be challenges. There definitely are challenges wherever you're working. Yeah. And yet there's these words written in a letter and it says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart.
Yeah.
As working for God and not just for humanity. How are you expending effort now? If you're someone who just turns up and does the bare minimum, I'm inviting you to see what you do as an expression of who you are. That may mean a change, certainly a change in how we perceive our work. Yeah. It may actually mean this is not for me. Yeah. I need to have the courage to move on. Yeah. You may be someone who is working motivated out of fear. And I want to challenge you to actually take a step of faith and say, God, I give you my work. Show me something new. Show me something different. And we can take work and use it to shape our future selves. We can use our work to shape the future of the world. And so as you've listened to this, I hope that this has provoked some thoughts about how you perceive work currently. Whether you're a volunteer worker, whether you're part-time, whether you're full-time, running your own business. We all have different perspectives on work. I hope you see that work can actually be life-giving, not life-taking. That work is actually a privilege where we get to serve someone. And I want to invite you to make that your perspective on work from here on in. And just to simply say, Jesus, I give you my life, my work life. And whether that's 4 hours a day, whether it's 40 hours a week or more. I know that many people work more than that. Jesus, I give this to you. Yeah. Give me your life. Help me to see this work from your perspective. And that will have an impact on your life beyond anything that you can expect. Because Jesus actually says these words. He goes, my food is to do the work of my Father. And even right now, as you're watching this, Jesus is at work. Step into this moment. Simply pray, Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And if you're ready to make that decision as you're watching this, then just pray those 2 simple sentences with us. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And if you pray that and you're stepping into a fresh perspective on work, then we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a comment, DM us, and we'd love to help you out on the next step in your journey. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.
Bye.